Welcome back to the Brown Word, and we are continuing on with the life of Joseph, which has taken um, just kind of a wrong direction when it comes to him being looked at as the son of promise of Jacob, and then um, but then he's sold into slavery by his brothers, and it seems like things have gone off the rails just a little bit for Joseph. But here we're gonna see the really just the Lord just shining through the life of Joseph and a country that did not believe in Jehovah, did not believe in the Lord. And so, with that, turn with me to Genesis chapter 39. Genesis chapter 39. We're going to be reading verses 1 through 10. The first about half of it is going to be looking at the situation that Joseph um, is facing and how he responds to it, and then how the Lord blesses him. But then the last half is going to be a situation that arises that um, could be tempting, and yet he holds true. And then on Thursday, we're going to really break down that situation, which is with his master Potiphar's wife, in verses 11 through 23, and just see the repercussions of that. But today we're going to be really looking at what does it mean to be obviously, yes, blessed by the Lord, but using those blessings in a context um, that is against the God that you believe in, and yet in the way that you live your life is a testimony to the God that you and I love and serve. So, with that, chapter 39, verse 1. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. So he's going to Egypt, which of course the country of Egypt is a huge player within the really the totality of the Old Testament. But of course, it definitely is in the book of Exodus, which is right after Genesis. So we're getting towards the point where Egypt is seen as this huge, just kind of landmark moment for the country of Israel. And so we're already starting to get to that point. Um, I think it's interesting to see that that's where he's taken. It's not like he's taken to just another random country. No, he's taken to Egypt. And in this time, Egypt was very much a world power at this point. And so, really, he is going into quite a situation. And not only that, but the person that he is serving is not just some like merchant that is in the marketplace. No, it is an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. So what does that mean? So he is in control of the guardsmen of Pharaoh. So basically, this guy. Not he's not necessarily the right hand man when it comes to power or when it comes to the authority that the title of Pharaoh has, but he is a very respected individual and a very trusted individual by Pharaoh. So this is, in a sense, a very prestigious, quote unquote, right? Because he is sold into slavery, but he is put into a very prestigious situation, one that will vault him eventually to the throne of Pharaoh to help save not just the country of Egypt, but so many others. And so you can already see, just without even seeing the name of the Lord yet, which appears right away in verse 2. But you see in verse 1, even though the Lord isn't mentioned here, you can see his handiwork, can't you? The fact that he's going to one of the most powerful countries in the world at that time, that he's going to one of the most trusted individuals of the ruler of this country. That is not a coincidence, right? And so that's really, really cool to see. But then we get to seeing what the Lord is up to in verse 2. The Lord was with Joseph and became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. Now, I think it's fascinating that he is called a successful man, not a successful slave, but a successful man. I think that is showing you and I just the amount of respect and trust uh, that Potiphar has in Joseph, and and it all comes back down to that first phrase: the Lord was with Joseph. I think that is a big reason why he is trusted and he is deemed so highly by a man that does not believe in the Lord. And yet he knows that there's something different about Joseph. And I think you and I have the same opportunity as believers, especially if you're a believer in the workforce. Not that you can't be, uh, not that this isn't the case in ministry or in Christian education circles, but if you are working in a outside of the outside of Christianity education or outside of the ministry job, you are surrounded by people that do not believe in the Lord, and yet by our actions and by our words, there is something that they can see that is different about us. And some people just are completely just magnetized to that. They are just drawn to that right away. Some it takes a little bit longer, right? But there is something there about that, not just with Joseph, but with us as believers. Verse 3. His master saw that the Lord was with him. There you go, verse 3. And that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So so Potiphar, I think this is interesting because yes, that just affirms what we were talking about, but it says his master saw that the Lord was with him. So does that mean that Potiphar knows the Lord? I don't think so. I think what this means is that Joseph is evangelizing. I think that is what is going on. I think Joseph, by his actions and by his words, has gotten this level of trust with Potiphar that they get to have these conversations about the Lord, and Joseph tells him about the Lord that he serves. And eventually it just kind of dawns on Potiphar, well, clearly this God exists and Joseph is on his side. Now, back in this day, uh, the Egyptians were very polytheistic. So my guess is that he Potiphar is basically grouping the Lord Jehovah with the Egyptian gods. So he's like, okay, clearly there's something here. It's not like he doesn't see that his handiwork is there and that he exists. But he just thinks of him as one of the gods and not the only God. So I think that's important to see there in verse 3. So Joseph found favor in his sight. We're back to verse 4, sorry. Found favor in his sight and attended him, and he made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in house and field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. So this is what a testimony, not just to the work ethic of Joseph, but the character of Joseph. And you have this guy that was given basically everything was given to him by Jacob because he is seen as the favorite in his childhood and his teenage years, and then all of a sudden to be taken out of that context and put into a context that he has to work and he has to show his character in that way changes him for the good, right? And so that's really, really powerful to see. But then, too, just more of the fact that our work ethic um, and our character as believers can be an evangelism tool in itself, and to the point where he is given charge or being a steward of everything that Potiphar had except for the food he ate. So basically, what that means is yes, basically, it means like Joseph's not hand feeding, he's not hand feeding Potiphar, right? But everything else, Potiphar doesn't have to worry about. He doesn't have to worry about his finances. He doesn't have to worry about his home, his appliances, or or his day-to-day operations. He doesn't have to worry about his schedule, his personal schedule for the day. Joseph is taking care of all of that, and just this loyalty that's building up here is powerful. But with that, then comes temptation. Because once we get to a point where everything seems to be going right, and we feel the Lord's blessings, temptation typically is not too far behind. Um, is that because the Lord is testing us? Possibly. Uh, but then, too, I think it's because Satan is also just mad about the fact that we're doing the Lord's work. And so, because of that, there's a temptation that comes up. So, the end of verse 6. Now, Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. And after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." So, first off, very straightforward. She is being very straightforward. But yeah, she is basically saying commit adultery on the man that has become not not just not just his master, but has become Joseph's friend, has become somebody that puts his trust in Joseph. And Joseph is like, absolutely not. Verse 8, but he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my charge. He isn't greater in this house. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" And so, again, character comes through for Joseph, right? He refuses right away. He doesn't spend time thinking about it, thinking, well, I mean, I have been really loyal and so I should get something out of this. No, there's no hesitation. He knows exactly what to say, and he knows where that comes from with his faith in God at the end, right? When it comes to how then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? So he knows that adultery is a sin. He knows that it would be a sin against God. But then in verse 9, he also shows that it would be harmful to Potiphar because his wife is um, his soul. They are connected by marriage, and so therefore, because Joseph values and understands the importance of the covenant of marriage, he therefore understands the sin of adultery. Um, which again, I think we are seeing the opposite of that now in our country, as the covenant of marriage is being not just destroyed, but is being twisted, I think is the better word. It's not necessarily destroyed, right? But it's twisted. And so the fact that we don't really know the covenant of marriage anymore, I understand it. Therefore, we don't really put adultery on this on this as a really bad thing anymore. It's more like a slap on the wrist kind of thing, like, oh, you shouldn't do that. No, like it's devastating. The sin of adultery is. So I think that's really comes forward with that. And then too, you just see again, you just see the character that is shining through. However, she does not give up. Sadly, verse 10. And as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her, or to be with her. So couple things about this here. I think um, temptation is not just a one time thing. It's not like I'll try once and then if you don't give in, I'll never try again. That's not how temptation works. It is a persistent predator. It really is. It is a persistent predator. And yet, Joseph does not give in. He would not listen to her because he is listening to the Lord. That's where he puts his faith. That's where he puts his trust. And that's where he puts his hope. And so he only listens to the Lord and not to her or and not to temptation too, right? And then it says to lie beside her. So again, that is another phrase for sexual relations or to be with her. And this one's interesting, I think, because in this context, I think you could say to be with her is the idea of sexual relations again. Could be, I think it could be this idea of being with her in a relationship, um, just a romantic relationship, like they're dating behind Potiphar's back. Um, they're not even having sexual relations, they're just dating. That's possible too. But I think what's more powerful here is to be with her. It could reference being alone with her and being in this moment where temptation is just absolutely the worst. And so because of that, I think she begins then to plot to find a time where she can get alone with him because he's not trying to get alone with her. And so I think that is where we get to the unfortunate circumstance in verses 11 through 23 where he does not give up on his character, but because he is of such godly character, she then throws him under the bus. And we will get to that on Thursday. But I hope today you see how our work ethic and how our character as believers can be an evangelism tool to those that are in our community. So I will see you Thursday. Thanks.